Welcome to the Stretch to Go podcast. My name is Ian Ray, your host. Today, I have the opportunity to interview Anya, who is also known as the Barefoot Queen. She is also known as Anya's Review on Instagram and Facebook, YouTube, based out of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And basically, wanted to have her on the podcast because someone that I've looked from afar and really inspired to, be in this journey of the barefoot shoe movement and living. And I want to just have her share her story. So, Anya, welcome to the Stretch to Go podcast.
Hi, Ian. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, I would love to have you share your story. Who are you? Where did you grow up? And obviously, how did you get into barefoot shoes?
So I grew up in California, and I didn't get into barefoot shoes until about 8 or so years ago. I grew up with the traditional approach to foot care. I started having foot issues when I was a child at 9. I'm hypermobile, so my joints are very lax, and I was having all kinds of inflammation and swelling in my feet. And they prescribed me some custom orthotics. And so I started wearing those at 9. And basically that was my go-to for the rest of my life up until about 28, 29, 30, somewhere in that range. It's amazing how you forget. I think I was about 29 when I first started wearing barefoot shoes. And so through those decades of wearing supportive footwear and orthotics, I was not really aware of my feet so much as I am now. I just knew that if I didn't use those supportive shoes on long days of walking or when I was exercising, that my feet hurt. And then I started having issues. But they were kind of kept at bay for a long time. And when I was pregnant with my second child, I developed really severe foot pain, and it didn't go away, and it didn't matter what I really did. The only thing that helped was being in a supportive shoe literally 100% of the time. So not just on long walks, not just on long days on my feet, like in the house and like walking from my bed in the middle of the night to the bathroom. And I was just completely reliant on it. And I wasn't really liking that so much. It just didn't seem right to me anymore. And that was what prompted me to investigate more. And my best friend was interested in barefoot shoes, and she recommended to me when I was going through this and nothing was helping and the traditional approach wasn't doing me any service. She kind of slid that into my path and recommended that I read the book Whole Body Barefoot by Katie Bowman.
Hmm.
And it's really about more than barefoot shoes. It's about the concepts that underlie the concept of barefoot shoes, which is that feet can be strengthened and feet have the ability to rehab the way that the rest of the body does. And we can train them and we can optimize them and we can learn how to use them better. And that ultimately that is going to support us in the long term, whereas orthotics are really more of a band-aid, more of a crutch. And that was how I got into it, was through that book and through my friend's advice. And it took me a while to build up to it. So I was wearing more transition style shoes for a while, ultra running,
Yeah.
and Birkenstocks were helpful for me when I was really reliant on the arch support because they had an anatomical shape. So I got some relief from that. And then in the meantime, I'm doing stretches and exercises and I'm practicing balancing on one leg and, kind of doing these like foundational things so that I was able to actually wear barefoot shoes in comfort. And it took me about a year, actually, to be honest with you. Um, and then I was like, okay, barefoot shoes.
So, what was it that what was the hardest part about transitioning and learning how to really work on the foot? What was the hardest part mentally, maybe, or even physically, that it took a while for you to say, this is what I'm actually doing to strengthen my foot so I can get out of pain?
I guess a few things. One is that it takes time, and that's hard. We live in a world of fast-paced silver bullets, immediate instant gratification. And so to think of it as a lifestyle and really a lifetime endeavor is challenging. It's can't overnight buy a pair of barefoot shoes and all my problems are solved. So that was hard to realize that I really had to do the legwork, both literally and figuratively, that I had to put in the time and that it would take time to see the results. And I am still truly seeing the buildup over time, the net positive results. You take a step in the right direction and it's incremental. You start seeing small improvements and they build on each other and it takes time to grow. And that might be the most challenging part of it is that it takes time. Also, it's that it takes work, or at least for me. I mean, I know not everybody's experience is different. Some people do a more passive approach where they're not in an acute chronic situation where they can start wearing barefoot shoes and immediately see benefits and they don't really have to do a whole lot of extra stuff. But for somebody like me, I really needed to exercise my feet until they were fatigued. Like doing a few toe taps here and there wasn't enough for me to start actually getting to the point where I didn't need to use orthotics because I had been relying on them for so long. My feet were so weak. So I really needed to tire my feet out. I needed to push my muscles to fatigue, which was kind of a new concept. It's kind of weird to think about that, like taking your feet to the gym and doing reps but it's really the same mentality of if you want to grow a muscle, there's actually a science to it. And, things like lighter reps, more of them versus heavier weight and shorter. There's like endurance versus muscle size and all of that applies. And it took me a little bit of time to realize that I needed to be actually working my feet a little harder, like a little more intensely, so that they were kind of getting to that point of muscle growth.
I know I was reading prior to having you on the show, I was reading a little bit more about you on your website. You've gone through some things where you're raising your son, and I know you used to like crawl to because you're in pain so much of your foot. And like I was reading, I was like, I can't imagine a mother, trying to take care of her kids and like literally you're in pain where it's hard to step and like your husband helping you like so there's definitely a big passion, probably a reason why you're doing this, what you're doing currently is because you've experienced this, being in pain where you're trying to find a solution. And now, since you've been doing this for a while, you built this great community of people. And of course, the brand's showcasing like really who you are and what you've done so you can get out of pain. Because I think most people who are getting into barefoot shoes, they probably have, similar or not as incremental experiences that you've had where they're in pain or maybe they do but kind of help us to like the thought process also like as a mother having go through this, what was it that made you, what was a tipping point to say, what, I have to really work on myself so that I can take care of my family, I can take care of myself, because that's a long time being orthotics, just kind of help us kind of go through. Sorry.
I think that sometimes you really have to go through something to be motivated to make a change. And I'm not sure that I ever would have really pursued my foot health if I hadn't gotten to that really, really low point. And it was truly out of fear, I guess, is I was just so afraid that this was going to be my life, that I wasn't going to be able to take care of my children, that I was going to be dependent on my spouse to come home and do everything, take the kids outings. I was at home while they were going to the zoo and to the park. And it killed me. I was like, I can't miss out on everything because my foot hurts. And that I just had this motivation that was out of pain and out of fear. Like not yes, physical pain, but like, like pain in my heart that I was missing out on my kids' life and that I couldn't be there for them in the way that I wanted to. And I just couldn't let that happen. I was just not accepting that. And I spent a few months in this like churning state where I was so frustrated because I I wasn't there yet, but I was motivated to get there. It was
Hmm.
like I had the fire lit inside me where I was like, I'm done with this. But it still took so long to crawl myself out of that position and work my way up. So it was this really kind of frustrating push and pull of like, I'm so motivated. I will do everything. Like, I will do everything that I need to do, but you can't fix it overnight. Like your body, it takes time to adapt. But yeah, the motivation there was like from very deep inside me, that very primal of just realizing what I had taken for granted, that being able to move freely is a gift and it's not guaranteed. And so I will do whatever I can to protect it, whatever is in my power. And I still have that. It's not as urgent anymore. And you can't live like that 100% of the time, right? But I still sometimes have to tap into that where it's like, okay, no, I want to be there for my grandkids. I want to be able to carry them and take them on walks. And so now I'm thinking, okay, my immediate situation is better, but I'm future proofing now. And I'm thinking ahead 20, 30, 40, 50 years about what I want my situation to be then. And I can use that feeling of that motivation, that fire, and that can help me get there. And so in a sense, I'm grateful for what I went through because like I said before, I don't know what my journey would have been if I hadn't gotten there. It would have probably been this kind of like, oh, I'm not like miserable, but I'm also not really optimized. And I'm, kind of in this like middle state. And that's where a lot of people live, is this like, oh, I don't really get why I can only do this much walking and then my feet hurt, or I don't really understand why I'm not really as mobile or as comfortable as I wanna be, but I'm also not miserable, so I'm not like, my life's not stopping, so I kinda just go along with it, and, yeah, a lot of people are in that situation. So my hope is that I can help people realize that you actually can improve from that, and it can be small and incremental and doesn't have to totally upend your life, and you don't have to like have your whole world revolve around this, but you can still do things that can over time make you more comfortable and more mobile and more dynamic now and into the future.
I have a client actually right now. She's hypermobile, so she has EDS. Not sure if you know what that is. Definitely, with fascia. And so like she's always complaining like I'm sore, but I'm super hypermobile. And this is something that's new to me. And I work with fascia, but even learning about EDS, for those of you who don't know, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, I think. Yeah, but where basically your tissue, your fascia is basically hypermobile, very stretchy, but you still have restrictions there. And it's something I mean, obviously in my own body, I won't be able to experience, but people who are living like this, it's, I think it's very debilitating. Or even those who are chronically stiff and just in rigid position. I mean, so that's one thing that I've kind of delved into this where in my podcasts I help people learn also about fascia and why it's important for your body to have relief through rolling out your feet because plantar fasciitis is such a big thing. So we don't really think about your body from the ground up, and that's why I love the barefoot community because I'm learning people like yourself and others who have had on the podcast, just learning about how everything's connected. Your body is. So we always have to look from the ground up, just because we don't know. That's some place on the foot that we kind of overthink. We don't think because we take for granted, like you were saying. Your feet does a lot, carries the weight of your whole body. First thing that touches the ground. So yeah.
And being to move and to go on walks and to be dynamic, it helps so many other things. Like, for example, stiffness from having hypermobile joints or joint instability is improved by moving your whole body. So if your feet aren't able to support you in that, then there's this compounding effect of my feet hurt. So I move less, and then I move less, which makes me more inflamed or my joints more stiff. And so then I'm uncomfortable. And so I'm moving less again. And it just can become this cycle. And if we take care of the feet, and by taking care of the feet, we're able to move more, there's just so much spider webbing,
Hmm.
even metabolically, blood sugar levels, being able to walk after a meal. There's just so many, there's this multitude of, uh, of areas where your feet are critically important, but we don't often think of them in that way.
Yeah. And, I think that's why I mean, even with sedentary lifestyle, I mean, people aren't walking a lot. And, goodness, I mean, that's one thing I think is like, for me, not living in a place where I can go into nature, I still have my kids go out and walk, throughout the day, or at least take some steps. Because, yeah, being in a suburban area, it's hard. There's no place to go outside. But if you're probably in a rural area, that's great. So I think that's another thing too. I myself am getting into grounding, something I never thought of, but it's just makes sense because I mean, proprioception, texture of things that your feet kind of loses. And I grew up in Hawaii, so I remember going to the beach, rocks on in the sand and everything. And I moved out here to the mainland and in the East Coast, there's not as many opportunities for me to go and put my foot in different textures unless I actually go out. But for you and your family, I mean, what are some ways that you are including play and even time outside or even being barefoot? What do you guys do as a family, I guess, to get your feet out there and moving?
Well, shoes are always optional. Well, actually, that's not true. If we're around a campfire, shoes are not optional. But as much as possible, if it's reasonably safe, shoes are optional for us. So my kids often just don't wear shoes when we go on walks around the neighborhood, and
Hmm.
they have tougher feet than I do. They're more comfortable running around barefoot, playing soccer barefoot, and um, playing at the park barefoot. Times when maybe our society or our impulse is to say you have to wear shoes, I try to remove as many of that those times as I can while still being safe and trusting my children to be mindful of their environment. So that's one thing, just being a little bit more open-minded about places where we can take our shoes off. In the winter, when it's truly unsafe in Iowa to be outside barefoot, we have a lot of texture inside, like floor mats and, things to roll your foot out on, and spiky stuff and some jungle Jimmy hanging things and climbing things, and so that we can still get that during the winter. So I feel like it's not so much something that I push on my kids, but just by encouraging them to be barefoot outside on texture is kind of our mentality.
Yeah. I guess another thing too is like for what you're doing in your brand, with Anya's review. How did that come about, I guess? What was the story in starting this barefoot shoe reviews and stuff on Instagram and Facebook?
So it started. My blog was founded in 2018. My blog and social media was founded in 2018 when I first started reviewing and posting about and sort of advocating for barefoot shoes, which wasn't really on social media, it wasn't done at all. There was
Okay.
some health practitioners that were talking about it, the Foot Collective and Gait Happens, but there were no barefoot shoe reviewers at the time. Social media. And then, so backing up a little bit, you asked how I started it. I was trying to find shoes that worked for more lifestyle because I had seen the benefits and I really couldn't wear pointy shoes anymore. And heel shoes also were really irritating to me. So it took me a while to lose the arch support, but the other features were like right away. The toe box thing, my toe was so sensitive from the chronic injury that I really needed that anatomical shape to my shoes. But I didn't want to be wearing athletic sneakers all the time.
Sure.
So I was searching for options that that could fit into all areas of my life and that still had the shape to them. And back then, there were very few options, and they just wasn't a whole lot of information, and there really wasn't much online at all to find about it. So I was doing my own research, and there was a Facebook group called the Minimalist Shoe Buy Sell Trade Group. It had like 700 people at the time, and I was active in it, and I was posting some of my finds, and people always had so many questions, and people were super interested in it. And I have kind of a meticulous mind, the way my mind works. So I was, gathering all this information and, tracking down these shoes and testing them out. And it was during that year of 2018 that I was like, maybe I could compile this into a blog. I talked about it for months. My husband has a background in IT, and so I was kind of like, could you like want to help me get up and running? So for Christmas in 2018, he set up a WordPress site, and he actually named it. So Anya's Reviews comes from him. So he set up the URL,
That's
and he chose it because he thought he didn't know, maybe I didn't want to write only about barefoot shoes. Like, let's keep it open and have it have. And he gifted that to me, and I had my first review before the end of the year. My first review was in December still. I was like so ready. I had it all in my mind. And so by December 31st, I already had posts on social media and a review and stuff up on the blog. And I ended up really liking the name Anya's Reviews because I feel like even though I do focus on the shoes and the foot health, I like having it be personal because I really want to connect with people, and I really strive to be authentic and to just be upfront and personable. And I'm telling you what my experiences are. And if I don't like something, I will not lie about it. I will not sugarcoat it. I'm just, this is how it is. And that was something that I felt came through better when it's just me talking to you. And I'm not even trying to push barefoot shoes on you. I'm trying to present you with the information and let you decide what you want to do. And I also cover a lot of the spectrum. So wide toe box, but not barefoot options, and how to adapt the shoes to where you're at personally. So it just felt more appropriate ultimately to have it be something like Anya's Reviews instead of something like barefoot shoe something.
And then fast forward into that 2018, and currently you have a team. I know you probably, build up steam, gain traction, followers, more people. Finding a team, finding people that have aligned the same values, same, viewpoint as what you see. How do you find those type of people that help with you when doing what you're doing? I mean, I'm assuming they're locally there in Iowa, but I'm not sure if there's a big following in Iowa of people who share the same values and philosophy as you. But
So it's interesting that you say that because first we had people hired some people. My assistant Samantha, for example, has been with me since 2020,
okay,
and she is a barefoot enthusiast that I happen to connect with who lives in Iowa. And then we hired Heather Savage, who also was in, I think, maybe 2021 or possibly the end of 2020. And she's also an enthusiast. And they're kind of our core team they've been with us from the beginning. And then from there, we started meeting more local people. And ultimately, I would say that the values that we look for in hiring are not maybe what you think, because we don't require people to be barefoot shoe enthusiasts. But instead, our core values are authenticity and trying to improve people's life and offering a service that isn't offered elsewhere. So we're actually, adding to the niche and not just trying to compete with other businesses that are doing good work. We're a small business that supports other small businesses. So this kind of like pulled back, not gimmicky, not salesy, like down to earth and brass tacks kind of an approach. That's what we're looking for. And so we have had a lot of people where it's like, I don't need you to be a diehard, like you have to wear barefoot shoes, but I need you to understand what my mission is and to be willing to help me spread it. And a lot of our employees have kind of started out there and then they get curious and then they want to try them and then maybe they love them or maybe they only wear them sometimes. And so it's been kind of fun to see that. And that's really been my approach with my family and friends too, is that I'm just not interested in making people do what I think is right for them. I'm really actually interested in just sharing my experience and letting people decide what they can take from it and if they can find benefit in it. And if they choose not to, then that's okay with me.
No. Have you ever done your like Enneagram test where you find out like what type of personality or like traits you are? Because I did it once, and I remember getting my results. Sorry, the reason why I'm bringing this up because I guess kind of relating to that is like I'm more of a educator slash advocator of beliefs. So I believe and I've experienced what I have gone through, just foot pain and injuries of my foot because of barefoot shoes and helping to learn more about the foot. I'm advocating for this because I think everyone should at least learn about it. And that's why I started this podcast. When I took this Enneagram test and it like nailed right there, I'm like, okay, that's why. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing because I think everyone should at least give it a look. And so I don't know if you ever did an Enneagram test on yourself, but I was just
I
I was just
haven't.
curious.
I haven't, but I would be curious too. I mean, I think we need all types of people, right?
Hmm.
I'm going to resonate with some people and you're going to resonate with other people.
What are some of the key benefits that you love to share with family and friends on the blog about the benefits of foot health slash barefoot shoes? What are some of the key benefits that you love to share with people?
I think the one that I really like to highlight the most is the anatomical shape. Because once you notice that, you can't unsee it. Like once you recognize that most shoes, even the so-called healthy shoes, don't actually reflect the shape of the human foot, then that's an aha moment and it just makes it's intuitive. And it's also one of those things that no matter where you're at, you can benefit from. So even if you have all kinds of foot issues or you're just really not interested in a full barefoot shoe, fine. But if you're looking for an improved shoe experience or you're looking for more comfort or you're dealing with an issue, at least there's the foot shape thing that you can really easily take advantage of and then not even have to deal like mentally with the other features. So that's the one that I talk about the most and that has brought in the most people in my own life as well, my personal life, family members and friends that just don't really have an interest in the whole concept for whatever reason, have been drawn in by the idea of the anatomical foot shape. So that for me is like ground zero. Like we can all unite and agree, even if it's you still choose to wear pointy shoes on a special occasion, sure, but your walking shoe or your work shoe or your exercise shoe, it just makes so much sense to have it be shaped the way your foot is shaped.
Yeah, it's amazing. So another thing too, I guess for you, since you started, have you noticed a growing trend and maybe growth of brands and different types of shoes, barefoot shoes that have come out since you started?
Yeah, there's been so many. I mean, just so many new brands. Yeah, there's been a huge growth, and a lot of it is really needed and great just to have options. Sometimes it's about capitalizing on a trend, and I don't know if all of it's going to last because I think that, especially today, being a small business is really not easy. And so making sure that brands add value and have a value proposition for the customers is more important than ever because we do have a much more crowded industry. But for the most part, it's great. And I think that people are carving out spaces for themselves and they're all different, but they offer something different to the customer, whether it's a different shape or a different level of padding and thickness, different functionality, different styles. So there's so much more choice. I mean, it's like astounding. I can talk about it, but unless you were there, I remember when the first Barefoot Chelsea boot was on crowdfunding.
What was
And
it?
it was the Vivo Barefoot Fulham is what it was called back then, and it was crowdfunded, and, now there are, like, 55 options for barefoot Chelsea boots, like, everybody has a Chelsea boot. In 2018, you couldn't get one, they didn't exist. A plain white sneaker. I remember when the first plain white barefoot shoe sneaker came out. There are literally hundreds now that you can choose from. So it's just a complete night and day difference.
Have you seen any unique shoes? Or like, I guess the reason I was asking this is because there are some brands that have unique shoes, mainly for, let's say, rock climbing or for cycling. There are so many different niches that don't have that for their customer base, but even basketball, you know. So what are some of these small niches do you see that there's still space available for a barefoot shoe to be created? Do you know of any small niches like, I don't know, in on the space of barefoot shoes?
I think there's a lot. I mean, there's been a lot of growth in this area in the past year. There's now anatomically shaped cycling shoes. There's military boots that are coming out. There's soccer cleats that are coming out. It doesn't always translate, though. Like sometimes you have to have concessions because for a sport, for it to actually work in the sport, it doesn't always work to have it be a fully barefoot shoe. So having people who really understand the niche is really important to develop the shoe. And it's going to continue to take time for that reason because these are really specialized products. Like climbing shoes, for example, there is a foot shaped option, but for some people, it's going to be too roomy because it can actually be helpful to have that kind of a smaller end for the footholds and things like that. That ultimately, when it comes down to it, you're balancing performance and with foot health, and they're not always compatible. Sometimes if you're really performance oriented, then you're not thinking about your foot health for those periods of time. And that doesn't mean that you can't focus on your foot health the rest of the time. But yeah, so I don't think we need to force barefoot shoe concepts into all of these areas because sometimes it just doesn't. We need to think about what are the goals of the person wearing that shoe. But it is really exciting just to see people start thinking about it because sometimes like, for example, with basketball shoes, why do you need a pointy basketball shoe? You don't. It doesn't need to be pointy. And so you can take the other features of basketball shoes that make them basketball shoes and then combine it with anatomically friendly features. And Zero Shoes has a basketball shoe that's out now. And there's one other one by Ben Patrick, the knees over toes guy, called the Uncivilized Sneaker. So we're seeing a lot more things come up, and that's pretty exciting.
Here's a fun one. You started a shop
Mhm.
and e-commerce. I know you're mentioning your husband has an IT background and he wanted to start a e-commerce sort of site, correct? Yeah. So he's leading the way. Kind of help me. How did that happen? Like, why did you start a shop? Was it just because like there isn't many US brands? Because I think this is the same thing. I reached out to brands saying, hey, I'd love to collab, but it's hard because, coming across borders, there's no stockist, people holding their shoes here locally. So I guess for you, why did you create on your shop basically? Is it just because there's not a lot of options, or what was it? What's the story?
So Anya's shop was started in 2020. And like you mentioned, my husband was the primary motivator behind that. And now we both work on it. I mean, heavily involved. My original plan of not doing much for it just didn't work out. But the reasoning behind it was that overseas, European brands in particular, have led the way in the lifestyle sector of barefoot shoes. That the US has a lot of really good performance options, but particularly in 2020, there weren't many barefoot shoes that you could wear to work, like dress shoes, or that were stylish and modern looking and dressy. But people really hesitated to order overseas because there's just a big barrier there in terms of shipping costs. And then if you need to return it, it's a big hassle. And then there's a language barrier if you're trying to work with customer service. So we started importing these brands for more accessibility in the US while at the same time supporting our our US barefoot shoe brands here on the blog. So I really wanted to find a way to improve the barefoot shoe industry in the US, improve access while still being friends with everybody, while still being a promoter and an advocate for the industry as a whole. So the shop is meant to have a very specific value proposition, which is to improve access to specific shoes here in North America. And then over time, I've added some of my own designs that are only available here. So we do have quite a bit of people ordering from overseas because now we have exclusive customized products. So it's ended up growing a little bit in that regard, but our core mission is still the same of really improving access and making shoes like this more attainable and also more acceptable in the mainstream.
Yeah, I think one thing I've noticed too is like there isn't a retail store because probably not we haven't reached there yet where there's a retail store mainly just selling barefoot shoes. And there's maybe a few here and there around the states here that are just strictly, they sell natural footwear. But that's great. That's great because I think people should have access here in North America because, yeah, it's harder for them to, send out any type of shoe here with the shipping and whatnot. And um, I love that you're making it accessible because, yes, more people, as we're looking into barefoot shoes and it's becoming more normalized, I think that's where people are going to go to probably first is here locally and then abroad. So that's awesome that you have this connection and you're really bringing like this community together.
Thank you.
The last question I have for you is where do you see the future of barefoot shoes, foot health, and of what we're trying to do? Where do you see it evolving in the future next 5, 10 years?
Well, we plan to continue on, keep on keeping on. And we have our event, the Barefoot Shoe Expo, which also was a first of its kind that we want to keep annually so that people can continue to have real life experiences trying these shoes because that still is an issue. I think that it's going to be more important for people to have in-person experiences. So I do think we're going to be seeing more brick and mortar stores and also the event I expect to grow. I see barefoot shoes as expanding into the mainstream in more subtle ways, like mainly the anatomical shape and the feeling of freedom. So maybe the name barefoot shoes won't stick on every iteration of it, but that the concept of a foot friendly and an anatomically friendly shoe, I see it already starting to take hold. And I expect to continue to see it showing up more and more in mainstream brands and even in non-barefoot shoe brands. This idea of a shoe complementing the functioning of the foot. Maybe it doesn't tick all of the boxes that I might be looking for, but that it's heading in the right direction. So I don't know if I see like my shop taking over, like suddenly, like it's a household name. I don't know if I see that exactly. Like it's exactly the way the barefoot shoe is today is just going to grow like that. I see it kind of percolating into into people's consciousness in a more subtle way. So truthfully, even though I am really committed to supporting barefoot shoe brands and helping them grow and reach more people. I do think that we're going to start seeing kind of this, maybe not exact growth, where it's just more of the ideas start growing and spreading, and people become more aware of their feet generally.
And then lastly, to close off, where is the next Barefoot Shoe Expo going to be held? Is it going to be in Denver again, or are you looking at different places? Because that would be cool if you could do like a tour. I don't know, different states. But just to make it like, because you did here in the state, in the Rockies, East Coast, I'm not sure. I mean, you're in the Midwest, so I mean that would be cool to just do it in your home state, But I don't know, where do you have plans for the Expo, Anya's Expo?
We had originally thought about moving it around and to a new state or a new location every year. That has ended up being almost impossible with the size that it is, with the number of people that want to come, the number of vendors, and the number of shoes that every vendor is bringing, and the size of the venue that we need. It's just logistically so much more than we realized to do.
Mm,
So we are going to be bringing the expo back to Chicago next year, which is where we had it in 2024.
uh-huh.
Currently, the thinking is that it will live there, but because we are still learning on the job, there's always a chance that it may change. But um, finding a home for it so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel every single year is going to be pretty important if we want to make it sustainable, if we want to keep hosting it. So, unfortunately, the traveling show isn't in the cards right now.
Cool. Okay. No, I'm just curious, but hey, Chicago is, I would say, central for people. So then
Easy to
it's,
get to,
yeah,
great airport,
perfect.
like every airline flies to. I mean, great airport might be overstating it. It's chaos, but
Awesome. And how would in closing, how would people, audience members who would love to learn about more about what you're doing, your mission and your story, how can they get in contact and learn more about you?
so my website is anyasreviews.com, and that's kind of the home base where you can get to all of my other platforms and projects. My Instagram is at Anya's Reviews, and I'm pretty active in replying to messages and emails that come in and comments on the blog. So those two platforms are usually the best ways to contact me.
Perfect. Anya, it's been a pleasure of mine having you in a podcast. Really great for me to learn about what you're doing, obviously, and of course, just really helping spread the awareness about your mission and for Barefoot Shoes for the community. So, thank you again for hopping on to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, and appreciate it.
And for those of you listening, don't forget to subscribe. Stretch to Go podcast. We release new episodes every 7 a.m. Eastern Standard on Fridays. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.